Welcome to the Nate KG Podcast, a show dedicated to exploring the nuances of jump rope, where I talk with jumpers of all skill levels, backgrounds, and fitness goals. This episode is the third installment of my chat with Stewart Isaacs at Jump Rope Stewart on Instagram. In case you missed part 1 or 2, Stewart is one of the top-tier world champion jumpers with a massive amount of experience in the sport. In addition to jump rope, he's also pursuing a PhD in Aeronautics and Astronautics from MIT. I would highly recommend going back and listening to both part 1 and 2 if you haven't already, because the knowledge bombs are just unending. So we round out our chat with a discussion of Stewart's academic pursuits, looking forward to sustainable ways to boost engagement and accessibility in the sport, the potential threat of not having more open discussions about possible abuse within our primarily youth sport, what jump rope has taught Stewart, and a lot more. All of the show notes for this episode can be found over at natekg.com. And now, please enjoy the final installment of my conversation with Stewart Isaacs. I'm curious, as people are asking you about jump rope, they're asking you to do it for fitness. What has been your process? Can you walk me through kind of, you say you're doing research and you're trying to figure this out. What are you doing and what kind of conclusions are you arriving at, if any, so far?
Yeah. Okay. I think my first experience with fitness jump rope was, again, that fitness workout at Stanford, my freshman year. I'm sorry. I learned so much because I would never do anything like that again. So we had like an hour. I got ropes for everybody and they jumped, and like what I thought was like, okay, there's probably only a few tricks that people need to know in order to get a good workout. They need to know like a fake push-up, across. I think I might have taught them like an EV2. And so and for an hour, I taught them these different skills, and then I had them put it all together into a routine, and we did the routine, and that was it. And they're like, I can't move.
Yep.
When I left halfway through, it was way too intense. If you haven't been jumping rope, you absolutely cannot jump into an hour session like that. Do not do that.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, that's not going to work. And we've learned that we can't do that for, Stanford jump rope auditions either. So it's like, okay, well, what I'm seeing now is like, what you need to do is probably intersperse jump rope with some other movements, maybe some push-ups, maybe some squats, jogging. I don't know. But you probably do not want people jumping up and down, doing these crosses repetitively over and over again without stop for an entire hour. One, this is not accessible for their bodies at the moment. And then two, it's not accessible at their skill levels. It's just like a bad idea for a lot of reasons. And so what I'm trying to do is dial in the right amount of intensity and skill level, and like using the rope, but also other things to get a good workout for folks. And I think people like jump rope dudes, they probably mastered it. And so I'm watching their videos trying to understand, okay, well, how are they doing this? And then, I look at people like Nick and Kaylee, where they're more catered toward, they do work with clients that are non-jumpers, non-competitive jumpers, but a lot of their clientele is also competitive jumpers. And okay, well, how are they doing this? And how do they design their workouts in general? And then how do I reach some, again, the goal is approachable, intense workout with the jump rope that might not necessarily be jumping the entire time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool to hear, because that was, that I've heard that sentiment from others, and I've felt it myself too, of like, how do you break it down? And I think my opinion on this, and my opinion on, and I see a lot of jump ropers doing this now. I mean, this is where we're currently at, given the state of the world, right? Is that we've moved to an online focused for now, and potentially long term, an online focus for business. And so, one of the big things that I've seen, being in the fitness industry for a bit of time now, is, how are personal trainers moving into the online space, which seems like it was impossible. It's actually not. And it's actually, I think, a very smart way to go about things from a model perspective. And it's something that I'm currently emulating, but
very scalable too.
Yeah. And I think that, to your point, like, how does a competitive, world champion jump roper, I mean, the way I see it, and feel free to correct me, the way I see it is you have a world, in your case and in many cases, a world champion competitive jump roper becoming a personal fitness trainer and using the skill that they have as their main tool to train clients. And while it is still fitness, both being a world champion jump roper and being a fitness trainer are both fitness, the skills required to be a fitness trainer and the knowledge to execute on that is completely different.
Yes.
And there's varying degrees to which you need to learn there. Like the jump rope dudes are a great example of a group that has identified, in my opinion, I believe their market from what I've seen is beginner, people who are new to fitness and have chosen jump rope and are beginning not only jump rope, but beginning fitness as well, by and large. And what's required, I mean, I've been a certified personal trainer for many years. And so as seeing different levels of training for different applications, what's required for the client that they're after and why their model is so intelligent and so well done, in my opinion, is that what is needed for that person at that moment in time is not a lot. Like you're saying, like you working with that class for an hour, you were thinking, these are crosses, some EBs, there's a basic push-up, but like, what's the big deal, right? Like that is, in our world, that's nothing. But to people who are brand new to it, that is, you might as well have been putting them through SEAL training.
Exactly.
You know? And yeah, it's really, it's funny because on one hand, I've spoken a lot online about how I see currently my role in jump rope, and the reason why this podcast even exists is like to bridge the gap of knowledge that exists between, you know, we are one jump rope community in my eyes, but at the same time we have different cohorts. And I like to use the word cohort rather than a faction or different groups, because I think that we're smaller groups within a larger group, you know. And I'm really curious what your opinion is on this. And I kind of I'm going to kind of put out my thoughts on something. I want you to kind of let me know what you think on it. I find a lot of competitive jump ropers, were they to step away from their knowledge they have now and sink into learning a little bit more in terms of business and a little bit more in terms of marketing, those two skills, and study those, and then come back to jump rope and apply it, I find that that's when things would become a lot clearer. And I'm curious on what you think about that, if you have thoughts on that. If not, we can move on.
Oh no, I totally agree. I think you're right, and I think, you know, one important thing you said is that like most competitive jumpers probably aren't credentialed to serve as a personal trainer. I mean, you have your, you know, personal trainer certification. You know, there's other people, and Nick and Kaylee being examples, they have degrees in this, like they're trained to do this. Most of us aren't.
Right.
And so we have to keep that in mind. And I think that there are some people who've gotten a little more serious about, okay, well, how do I take these skills I have and turn it into a lifestyle that I can, you know, earn enough to like live off of. This is my passion. This is what I'm good at. How do I turn this into something that makes money so I can live? And I'm starting to see that like there are some people who are getting serious about the model that they're using to like transition, you know, their passion into that. You know, there's some people with some very large followings.
Yeah.
Making money from that. Average being one of them. And so I agree. Like when people get serious about that, I think they find that they'll have more success in making that happen. And there's so many vectors, right? There's like, it's hard to wrap my mind around. It is a universe, right? Fitness is not even coherent enough to like describe all the aspects of the sport, right? There's people in fitness who do CrossFit. There's people in fitness who are just beginning. There's some more advanced people who, you know, have more profound mastery. Then there's also like the freestyle enthusiasts, you know, in single rope versus double dutch versus like competitive, you know, like you can't even draw a neat circle anywhere in terms of like dividing it into factions or groups. So, you know, that's just trying to understand it is hard enough. And so there's a lot of space for people to transition into turning jump rope into a lifestyle or a business. And I think, even though there's people in this space, there's so much room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. Let's take because you've mentioned a little bit of engineer lingo like vectors, which I totally dig. I like super jive with the engineer mindset. What this is a hard left turn, but what is it that made you want to pursue a PhD in aeronautics and astronautics? I mean, because
Yeah.
that is quite the undertaking.
Yeah. Okay, towards the end of high school, I was like, I need to figure out what kind of school I want to go to and what I want to do. I have no idea. I could do business. I could do something more sciencey. I don't know. My high school, it was a public Montessori high school, one of the first in the nation. And we had this component of called like senior project where we spend a year studying something, and write a paper, present on it. And so I chose to do mine on basically technology that can make aviation more green or environmentally friendly, because I wanted to do something that I felt was kind of impactful but also interesting. And I'd done a lot of projects on aviation related stuff, so I was like, why not? And so at the end of it, I was like, oh, this was cool. I learned a lot. I talked to some folks at NASA. This was fine. I guess I'll just keep doing this. Around that point, Stanford got on my radar, and I was able to, I guess, gain entrance into it. So like, okay, I'll do aerospace engineering at Stanford. They did not have aerospace engineering for undergrads, but they did have mechanical, and so I did do that. And then I'm trying to think how I decided to do graduate school. I won some fellowship my sophomore year, and their entire goal is to diversify the professoriate for engineers, and I guess for engineers in academia. And so they fund like summer research, and they encourage you to apply to graduate school. And I was like, fine, that's cool. It's money, research is fine. Let's just keep doing this. And so I had good experiences with research. I was getting encouragement to go to graduate school. I was like, I do like research. Academia could be a cool thing for me. Might as well. So I applied, went to MIT, and I was able to like finish my goal of like actually doing aerospace engineering. And the PhD makes a lot of sense for me because I don't really like the idea of regular jobs. um, I like having a little more autonomy. I do think I can do impactful stuff with my research. So I'm in the lab for aviation and the environment. So I basically took my senior project from high school, and I've now turned it into my PhD work, where I look at different technology policies and methods for improving the environmental impact of aviation. Um, and I'm just still doing it. It's fine. So here we go.
That's interesting in a couple of respects. One that I think is really important for anyone who is a competitive jump roper, or anyone really who is at this point listening about, if personally looking at your history and where you're at, my bias is I would have thought that you had this dream or this goal that you were just getting after. But it's interesting to hear that this has been an along the way kind of process. And I think that is, at least from what I've seen in my own experience, I think a lot of people put a huge amount of pressure on, let me figure out what I'm going to accomplish with my life now. I'm going to have to figure out everything in the plan that I need right now. And here you are, someone who obviously you were working tremendously hard, but you were seeing opportunities along the way. Your hard work was giving you opportunities as you were going, and you were taking advantage of the things that were showing up, and you are pursuing, have been, and continue to keep pursuing this path. And I think that it's very cool and very important to point out that, like, as someone who felt that pressure in high school and in college of like, figure out what you got to do, get it done, don't mess it up. It's cool that you are seeing opportunities as you're going, and then each step of the way evaluating, planning, readjusting if needed, and then executing.
Exactly. That's exactly how it's been.
That's really cool. Why? This is going to seem like, I think, maybe a silly question, but I'd like to ask it anyway. Why do you even want to have an impact?
Ooh.
Because you said, you don't like to work the standard job style, which I completely agree with. But you said, you can have impact with your research. Why even have impact in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, I think I've been incredibly fortunate throughout my life to have a lot of things, go well for me. A lot of people have invested in me to get to this point, and I feel like it's just my responsibility to give back as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like the debt that comes with. I wouldn't say debt, but I think it is a facet of just being alive. It's like, what am I going to do to improve the place that I've been? I didn't ask for a lot of these things that have been given; they were just given to me.
Mm-hmm.
And how do I, leverage that to improve other people's lives in the same way people have improved mine?
It's more of an inspiration than a debt.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
Hmm.
now that you're alive, what are you going to do with
Mm-hmm.
it?
Yeah. What is what was the Archer Cornfield Fellowship?
Yeah. So that was a year-long fellowship where they're looking for researchers around the world who could come to this university, Ashesi University, in Ghana, and contribute to their engineering or computer science program. And so I heard of it. It was like the second year of grad school. My research is like cool, but I was like, I don't know if this is exactly how I want to be using my time. I'm not even sure if the PhD makes the most sense for me. And I was working on this social enterprise where we're looking at basically solar powered poultry egg incubators. So hatching chicken eggs using solar energy. And I was working with people in Burkina Faso. And so I was like, okay, well, I do need to get to the region of West Africa this summer. I was looking for ways to do that so I don't have to just like come out of pocket. I heard about the fellowship, and my first thought was, oh, I'm not going to apply for the fellowship, but this seems like a university I could, partner with to like get into the region, work with students, and like push forward this social enterprise idea, just like get a taste of it. And I did that. I set up that partnership. I was heading out, and then the more I thought about it, the more I realized that this would be a good moment in my life to actually take a break from my program and do this to understand like, well, is the PhD for me? Do I really want to be a professor like I think I do? I haven't really tried that out, and it was also just good timing to get away from MIT. I'd broken up with my girlfriend at the time, and I was like just trying to get away from that.
Oh yeah, nice.
So
I feel like that's the catalyst for a lot of really good decisions.
exactly, it's like, yeah, I'm single now, so what am I going to do? I'm
Leave
only
the
in the
country.
So I applied. I ended up me and one of my best friends applied at the same time actually, and that gave me some confidence that this is a good move. Applied, I got it. And so I went for the summer to do the social enterprise stuff. Come that fall, I transitioned into teaching, as part of the fellowship, and learned a lot. Learned a lot.
What did you learn?
Learned a lot about myself. Learned a lot about how to be resilient and how to, work hard, but also like keep my well-being practices in place. So jump rope played a really important role in staying sane while I went through, the process of, trying to teach 70 people. First time I'm teaching in like a course that's non-trivial, right?
Yeah.
Thermodynamics is a lot of times people's least favorite course in engineering,
Mm-hmm.
on a different continent away from all my support systems. So it's like, well, how do I set up these support systems digitally so that I
Mm-hmm.
can like be well and talk to like people I care about? How do I set it up physically? What kind of nutrition is important to me? Because I ate rice and chicken every day, every meal. Like I kid you not, I
Mm-hmm.
had jollof and chicken every single day, twice a day.
Wow. That is, yeah. Well, at least you were one step closer to being a bodybuilder.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Just add some broccoli in there.
Yeah, the vegetables were really hard to come by. I had to make a lot of effort to get that. But yeah, in a lot of ways, that my experience there prepared me for this time in the pandemic. So,
Mm,
I don't really get to go out much. I had to stay connected to my, the people I care about digitally, and I had to maintain some level of well-being in very non-ideal circumstances.
mm-hmm.
And for me, that looks like getting outside every day,
Mm-hmm.
jumping rope, making the phone calls to the people I care about while I
Mm-hmm.
continue to do my work. Because if you're not in a mentally good place, you can't do mentally challenging work. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, in that sense, the experience fortified me to prepare for almost anything. And this is one of those almost anything moments.
And that's why, I mean, earlier you mentioned mental health and mental health being important to you, and this is is this kind of the catalyst of why that became a priority?
Yes, but even throughout undergrad and graduate school, jump rope has played that role for me.
Mm.
So when you had Sunny on, I did listen to that, and I think a lot of what she's saying is spot on. And there's so much we don't know about the benefits of the sport that I think with some research we can answer these questions. Because I think there's a huge neurological component of the sport that we have not even touched on at all yet. But I think the coaches know it, but we just don't. We don't have like the papers written about it yet.
It's funny you mentioned that, and like that's been one of my biggest questions that has led me to read sections of neuroscience textbooks to no avail. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten an answer, but like to me, the whole left brain, right brain thing and the motor skills and crossing the body and the rhythm and the music, like jump rope hits on all of those. Like every single thing that I've ever seen referenced as a way to strengthen the brain is applied in jump rope. And like you're saying, like that has been honestly one of the things that frustrates me the most about jump rope is like I don't like to always put out things that are just like, here's what I think about this. That's not enough. Like what's the data? Like I feel like I'm ready to stop resting now, but is my heart rate actually lower? Is my lactic amount in my body, is that actually been lowered, or where am I at? And though I've felt it and I've heard it confirmed through other people based on what they feel about their experience, to your point, I think that there is a huge piece that has no formal research around it. And I would really love to see that happen and even figure out how to approach that kind of research in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell some like anecdotal stories. I've heard of a person who, I guess has shakes a bit. When they go through everyday life, just because of some neurological stuff. When they're jumping and practicing consistently, they don't shake anymore. I've heard of a person who would constantly get their rights and lefts mixed up. As like this is a young person who's like in elementary school and was actually getting treatment for some neurological disorders. This person started jumping rope, and the teachers would come up to the coach and be like, "I don't know what you're doing, but like, you need to keep doing it because I've never seen improvement like this ever." And they're no longer like, I mean, to the point where the neurological people the jumper is working with are like, "Yo, what is going on?" Because this is just improvement. So like, I mean, at the extremes, we know that something is going on that is therapeutic in some way, to the point where people have physically, I mean, no longer shaking is huge. We also see from some of the enthusiasts just their anecdotal stories of like either battling addiction or depression, and the role that jump rope plays in helping as being a therapeutic for those ailments is wild.
Yeah, it's insane.
And we still don't really understand why. We have guesses based on other research, but we really don't know. And I will also say, you mentioned the lactic acid buildup versus like heart rate. Most coaches aren't measuring the lactic buildup in their jumpers' muscles.
Well, they I think legally can't because you have to prick them and get a blood draw. So like,
okay, for good reason then.
yeah, exactly. I'm taking it a little bit farther than anyone probably should, but yeah.
I was wondering. I'm like, don't you have to like?
Yeah, you have to buy a bunch of things to stick you, and then like it's actually a really sucky process to do by yourself because like you have this machine that has the little tab, that it's like a glucose meter basically, the one that I use, and so like if I'm running a set, it's actually kind of difficult because like as soon as I'm finished with a set of speeds, you can imagine 30 seconds, you're like you can't hold on to shit, and like I literally have to like have a towel that's already ready to wipe my fingers off, and then I have to use a prick which is not that big of an issue, but there's something cognitively about like
tricking
drawing
yourself.
drawing blood while you've been through a 30-second speed, and like it's not the first set, it's like the last set. It really blows when you miss, like, because you have to press it into your finger, and if you miss it,
Oh my gosh.
you miss that, and the time window is so small, dude. Like, because like you have to get it within 5 to 10 seconds, otherwise it's not as accurate as it could be, you know. And for my own stuff, obviously it's not critical that it be exactly accurate, but for my own needs, I would like it to be, you know.
Yes.
But I learned a lot from that, man. There's a lot of times where I thought I was a lot lower than I was, and that was very revealing to see that the numbers were far higher than they should be.
And that's I think one of the biggest things that I think about, which is that there's not a lot of science-backed coaching yet,
Mm-mm.
you know? And so, and especially seeing, I mean, if you look at the competition scores in the past decade, right, they're pretty constant. You'd expect a certain trend of growth, and then they explode.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the difference in that is like better coaching and preparation, right? You wouldn't expect this type of speed growth to happen this fast based on past trends. And I
Right.
think the difference is just a different level of coaching. People understand what to do to get better, and we're only scratching the surface. There's so many science-backed approaches that we could bring into jump rope when it comes to how do you train your power skills to, like,
Mm-hmm.
hit that ideal power to weight ratio, in a way that doesn't destroy your body, or how do you do certain skills with the form such that you can rep it a lot of times without destroying your wrists or ankles or what have you. There's so many things that we could, I guess, professional level sports sciences that we could bring to the sport that are just going to unlock a different level of
Mm-hmm.
jumping in the future.
And that, I feel like in addition to that, in terms of the growth, what about accessibility? I feel like there's been, in terms of, I mean, there's the access to knowledge for the coaches, but I feel like a lot of the best jumpers, certainly in freestyle, I'm assuming in speed, but I'm not entirely sure. The jumpers who have more access to being around other jumpers and have more access to traveling, basically,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine. I mean, I suspect very strongly that this is the case for people who are jumpers who are really good at freestyle, and I'm assuming it is a similar story for those who are good at speed as well. That having access to travel and access to being places is also something that allows them to get better. You know,
Hmm.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I actually I think I disagree. I think that would be the fair way to characterize it up until 2015.
Mm-hmm.
I think for that part, I mean, when you spoke about, you didn't really have access to like disproportionately great jumpers starting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that was the case for, well, I guess that wasn't the case for me, right? I was jumping with Marcus, but for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, and that's why coaches, it was so important for them to make sure that you're going to the workshops and
Mm-hmm.
the camp, because at some point your jumpers reach a threshold where like you can't teach them new skills because you can't do those new skills and you don't know them. You have to introduce them to the people that do know those skills and can break it down for them. I think that one of the biggest game changers for the sport was when Instagram started allowing videos. At least it was for me,
Mm-hmm.
because I think I remember Nick had finally like encouraged me enough to get an Instagram, and so I did. And at first I was just posting pictures, but then once they made that switch, you get 15 seconds of jump rope video, and I was like, oh my gosh, I know exactly how I'm gonna use this. It was the same time I rewatching Lee Rising's
Mm-hmm.
the rope show videos on his
Yep.
Facebook. I mean,
Yep.
if you Yo, I will never forget that evening. I was like, oh my gosh, there's 100 videos that are just
Yep.
off the wall, just like so good. And I was like, this is a treasure trove. And I would love to be able to create something like this myself. And so that's when I started, posting videos to my Instagram. And what I've realized since then is, one, I think I've was able to like I think I was able to like accomplish that and create this, just a full Instagram full of just videos that just hopefully are at a high enough level to inspire people to push themselves. And since then, a lot of jumpers I've seen a lot of jumpers reach out to me or like cite me as inspiration, and that's really exciting to see. And in this era, I'm able to see like jumpers coming up in different parts of the world that are following some like the most leading jumpers on IG, at least in the competitive world, and drawing inspiration from that and incorporating it into their own skills and becoming great where they are without necessarily needing to travel to, I don't know, Sweden or
Mm-hmm.
where have you.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many like one of my favorite things to do is like come across a video, an Instagram page where it's just like someone in like some country that I've never been to before, never met them, but they're just getting it. Like it's just
Yeah.
so impressive. And like, and it's like, where do you come from? Before like people generally are on your radar, right? When Himisi hit the scene, I was like, oh, this person's going to be a monster. And sure enough, he did become a monster because I had seen him in person at
Mm-hmm.
competition. That's not the case anymore. Monsters come out of nowhere.
Yep.
Nowhere.
That's
Like,
so true. And especially with this new version of jumping that we're talking about, like these new blends, there are people who may not be able to do the same high level skills that we're used to seeing from competitive jump roper, but there's like this new, like a good example is Deanna from San Francisco did it's called the JK is Lee's version of naming it, where it's like it's a Kruger and an inverse Kruger on the same leg.
oh, interesting. Wait, what was this person's name?
Deanna, this jump rope gal on on Instagram, and she
Interesting. Okay.
did, and she's not gonna do porter level backflips because that's not her mo. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's not her background, but she is doing skills that are extraordinarily complex and difficult. And like even Lee was in the comments there and said like, this is the first time he had seen it done ever.
That's wild.
Right. So like and it's cool seeing like when you say like new jumpers popping onto your radar, there's like a new level, I guess, of like nuance to the styles that they're bringing forward. There's this
Hmm.
there's this one guy, I think it's Toa, Toa. I think there's some numbers in his username after that. I don't remember the exact handle, but he has this style of putting on not only really good music, but doing a single rope, like it's almost like a 50-50 split between competitive footwork and like hip hop style jumping.
Love
And
it.
it's like fusion of single rope, but there's something about it that's a little bit different in a really good way. And so like to your point, it's interesting to seeing how these things are popping up, which so I was gonna ask you a question on how to make the competitive jump rope world more accessible,
Hmm.
and it seems like this is part of it. But I've been talking to a lot of jumpers over time, but especially recently, about this question of like, in my perspective, and I want to know yours. It seems like the world of competitive jump rope can be inaccessible. And I don't to be honest, that's not even worth hedging around. I think it's just kind of a little bit of a fact. It is a fact that in order to attend and be fully immersed in the world of competitive jump rope, you need a lot of resources to back you.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I think the internet is helping and Instagram is helping, and YouTube helped me back in the day when it was the jump rope YouTube community was very much just beginning, and Dylan was one of those people that was there.
Hmm.
And so was Cebu, so was Billy Wildy, and
Yeah.
those guys, and Adam and Jacob. And we were all on there. Just it was like the pre-Instagram. But
Yes.
now that there's that's a huge asset. But I'm curious what your thoughts are on like, A, do you agree? And B, what are your thoughts? If you do agree, what are your thoughts on how to make it more accessible?
Whew, yeah. Um, I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I agree. I think let's just have some plain talk right now. The competitive jump rope world is like really, really white,
Yeah,
and
it is.
it's unusually so when you look at like, especially the origins of the sport in the United States, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, part of the reason we're at this moment is because of some choices that were made historically, right? The ways that some of the organizations were organized didn't really make a lot of room for some of the other existing organizations like ADDL, NDDL, correct?
Is
Um,
this real quick? Is this something that we can, and this part can be cut out if you'd like, but
uh-huh.
can we provide specifics on this, or is this better to be more of a general discussion?
Hmm. I don't know enough specifics to like
Okay.
implicate any individuals.
Yeah.
So I
Or
think
I
we
wasn't
can.
even thinking like individuals. I'm just thinking this person did something really wrong. No, I wasn't thinking
Yeah,
like individuals. I was thinking more like certain organizations and what measures were taken and what structures were enacted that caused this.
I think
Um,
I'm willing to go there. We
okay.
can do it.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So if you compare like how long I'm not sure, I'm gonna get them mixed up, but like NDDL, ADDL have been around for
Hmm.
a very long time,
Hmm.
like 60s, 70s. Um, those that were missing when USA Jump Rope was made, what, 1994? Those weren't really a part of the conversation where one was focused on a lot of like, primarily double dutch in like cities, and you would have a lot of black people in it. And it was really interesting for me is that whenever people ask me about jump rope, the first thing that they go to is double dutch, and they
Yep.
talk about their experience with double dutch growing up. And I know exactly what they're talking about. I experienced that as well,
Mm.
even before I joined the team, and that's completely absent from my experience in competitive jump rope. And I would argue some of that is by design. It was not included in the beginning of a lot of the organizations we're part of. I would argue that some of the I would argue some of the rule changes. I think 2008 was the big rule change with FISAC, where we're moving away from some of the more, I guess, like power skills and like flashy style to a more technically precise style.
Mm.
And you compare some of the jumpers that I grew up with, Timothy Martin, Marcus Taylor, Sean Hamilton. These are all black men. Um, their style wasn't going to cut it anymore to win these competitions. And for the USA, since that was the style that we were using at the time, that means we weren't going to win some of these competitions like we did before.
Hmm.
And I don't think that was necessarily malicious, but we can look at the impact that it had.
Right.
Um,
Despite
I
the
think
lack
that
of malicious intent, there was still a result that followed.
exactly,
Hmm.
and you can compare like there's a whole group of at the time when I was coming into the sport, there were a lot of like very um, prominent black athletes I could look up to and emulate their style. That is not really the case as much anymore. And so, we can ask questions as to why. I don't think I have a good coherent answer as to why that's the case, but I do think we need to, start to have the conversations about, are we intentionally including different styles, or are we
Hmm.
intentionally excluding certain styles that some groups like? When we talk about the rules for like double dutch, are they inclusive of some of the styles for NDDL, ADDL? A lot of times some double dutch teams will successfully transition into, I guess, what we call the competitive jump rope world, USA Jump Rope, World Jump Rope, FISAC, what have you. A lot of them don't, and they won't. And so that's something we need to be cognizant of. And then there's another thing, which is that, my jump rope team has fizzled out and died, right?
Is
I
that the
started
rope and
on
rockets?
the rope and rockets no longer exist. So I mean, some of us, me and Dylan still jump. Catherine Hook still jumps a bit. Most people aren't still jumping. And that's the story for a lot of jump rope teams around the United States. And I don't know about what's happening around other parts of the world. And some of that is because there's just not. It's really expensive to keep a competitive jump rope team in this era, right? You have to
Can
go to
I?
region.
I want to ask you a question real quick, and I know I'm interrupting, but it's like really present. I do not want to forget this question.
Go for it. It's okay.
Have you? Because I suspect you have far more hours with people face to face and talking with people deep in the community more than me. Have
Hmm.
you met anyone or heard of or seen any people attacking this issue in terms of trying to find and support a model? And I know that AMJRF has made a lot of adjustments that change the model for how the business can be run or how the
Mhm.
teams can be run, which, and I consider them a business anyway, but that's more of a personal opinion. Have you seen anyone discuss or implement a model that would lead to a success? Because to me, it seems like since we're all after the same thing with the team, there's got to be some kind of a model that can be the same way McDonald's franchised their stuff, and that's a huge success for many reasons. There's got to be a way to create a franchise or a jump rope team model that would be able to be applied in a variety of contexts, if not all of them.
Yeah, and I think that that's a good question, because that's kind of a shift in the conversation that's been happening in the past decade. I think, after the 2008 competition, I remember being, on the airplane with Team USA, and Sean Hamilton really articulating a vision to us at the time of like, one, we're very far away from the Olympics, but two, here's some changes that need to happen in order to make like the sport actually get there. And I think part of that vision he started to articulate back then, but is really coming to fruition now, is bringing the sport to a level where you can participate in it without necessarily having to be a world, going to world competition, right? If there is enough infrastructure in your city where elementary school people can go and compete in the same way that they compete in a basketball tournament or a soccer tournament, then the sport is more accessible, as opposed to having to drive across 3 states or fly, to Florida every year. Most people can't do that. There were a lot of people on the team that were better than me that were not going to nationals because they couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
So in order to solve that, one of the things you need to do is create an infrastructure in the location you're at. I do think that people like, Nick and, other people, and I think, Brian is also someone who also, works closely with people like Sean, or, people who are like very cognizant of what are we doing to put in place programs, not teams, programs that will allow for people to engage with the sport at their level. And that's one way we can increase the sustainability, but also the accessibility of the sport. And I think it is the role of these governing bodies to support the development of these programs in these locations so that we have the accessibility that we need. I'll say another story. I was talking to Tony, who used to jump with the Pink Panthers in Chicago. And she was articulating to me how in Chicago, there was this very robust system that, where there's a lot of different double dutch teams in different neighborhoods that have a legacy of like, I guess they've been there for a while and people are very passionate about it. And there's competitions in the city frequently, right, between double dutch teams, and all that's gone, right? None of those teams exist anymore. So these programs, these, leagues, they've existed. It's a matter of identifying them and supporting them so that they can continue, even when people, someone's mom decides they don't want to coach anymore, right? The whole team fizzle out.
There needs to be a system, not a single point of failure.
Yes, that's just not it's not robust. It's very vulnerable to failing. So we do need to have those conversations. Not only does it make our sport more sustainable, but it makes it more accessible. And then we need to think about, how do we make it such that, Timmy from Arkansas doesn't have to fly to California just to compete.
Right. What, to play devil's advocate, just because the way I like to go about things is to sometimes do the exact opposite. Why, for the sake of working through the idea, why leave that responsibility on the NGBs? Because to me, while it's very important and it does, I mean, it directly impacts the NGB and obviously like membership and athletes involved with the sport, it's also wildly different from a business. Like if I think of it in terms of like, if a business is putting out a product or they're responsible for a service, right? I guess service makes more sense than a product in this case. Running an NGB and running these tournaments, while you like, I on one hand I totally agree that they could be inclusive with these different double dutch styles, but on the other hand, why not make a league that is dedicated to this style, the same way we see in like skateboarding, where there's Street League, there's the Barracks, there's X Games. Like these different organizations have different MOs. Like they're after something different, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the same way that gymnastics has formal floor routines and they have ribbon gymnastics and they have these different variations that use similar skills but apply them differently, you know, why not do that versus lump it into one organization? I mean, one organization I think might be probably ideal because it's under one single contact point, but at the same time, if it gets done, it gets done. You know, what are your thoughts on that? I know that's kind of a scattered topic or whatever, but yeah.
I think that in the United States, there are multiple organizations already, right? There's AAU, USA Jump Rope, AMJRF, ADDO, NDDO.
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine in the future, there will continue to be multiple organizations. And I think that's a good thing. I think that does kind of get to, you know, slightly different styles. And that's good. Just like we talked about for skateboard or other sports.
Mm-hmm.
And so you could certainly take that model and say like, okay, y'all gonna do that, but we're gonna do this, and we're just gonna make it work here. That's fine. But I do think that I just don't think that what things are working as they should yet. You know, I don't think that you should even if you carve out a certain piece of the jump rope universe and you say this is where my organization is going to lie. I do think you have some responsibility to the folks in that universe to support them in staying alive, at least their organization. And if that's your business, then you need to cultivate your customer base, right? And I think that there's so many teams that die out. I mean, it's it's terrible. There's so many. A lot of your favorite jumpers came from teams that don't exist anymore,
Right.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
Right. Because like now, like you know, like all those other people in that town or city that could be great, just like the people who come before them, no longer have the opportunity. There was some really, really, really good rope and rockets after I like left the team that no longer jump.
Yeah, like Bob and Miles, right?
Bob and Miles. Miles did like a backflip TJ when he was like 11.
That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
Like Bob was like a high level gymnast.
Yeah.
Like, can you imagine what kind of monsters they'd be today?
No, that'd be insane.
Yeah.
It'd be insane. So I guess the idea is less than about what organization is doing what, and more about the issue is less so rules of competition, more so sustainability of the culture.
Well, I think there's multiple dimensions of it. I think sustainability of the culture is an important facet, but I do think that the rules have an impact on. I mean, I think
it all works together.
They're related. They're a little different, but they are related.
That makes sense. They're all. It's interwoven because it's not a clear cut process. Otherwise, it would have been solved. So that's interesting. Do you have any other thoughts on the accessibility piece of that?
I'm trying to think if I do.
We can always double back later too if something pops up.
I think I will say I think I took a break for a couple years from World Jump Rope just because one, I was in college, two, I couldn't afford to go to like Portugal or what was it, Sweden, Norway? Yeah. There was one more, Paris. I didn't go to any of those. Those are all in Europe. I couldn't afford those flights. I didn't go. Had I been able to afford it, I probably would have went. So another facet is I'll make the argument that I'm a pretty good competitive jumper, right? And I should probably go.
Right.
You probably want me to go to those events, and so help me out.
Yeah.
We should be helping out athletes get to these international competitions as well, and I think that's something that is going to be addressed in the future. With the whole, you make it, you're one of these like 3 individuals that are going to be supported by this governing body, and they're going to help you pay your way there, right? And that's probably how it should be. Can you imagine how silly it would be if Kipchoge or Usain Bolt couldn't make it to Olympics because it's like, yo, that's in Greece, man. I can't afford that. That's so dumb. That is the dumbest reason to keep someone out of the sport. Um, so
I
the
love
resources
that.
could come from somewhere.
I mean, you're spot on. You're spot on. Both in the message and the delivery. I mean, it's a lot of my thoughts, and this isn't a solid thing, but I am becoming more and more firm in this idea that while I love the altruism of a nonprofit, I think that you can also build a for-profit company with altruism as its core and succeed more. And I haven't done it and I haven't seen it, so I can't, there's room for error for sure. But when I think about these models, to go back to skateboarding, you've got these top 10 guys, or plus or minus 5 or whatever, and they go on this tour across the US, across the world, hitting these different spots, having these different preliminary tournaments. There's money on the line.
Mhm.
There are things, street leagues, I'm talking about street league specifically because that's what's in my head. Street league is selling certain things. They are a business. They are running it for profit, but it comes from a guy that cares deeply about the culture. And as a result, not only have they created these competitions, but they've put out the marketing piece, the content piece, contributed to the ecosystem of skaters, that now they have something not only powerful, but yeah, you're going to have personalities here and there that are not altruistic in terms of the actual athletes. But by and large, I think that a lot of it, because there's money, it pushes things forward in a different way.
Hmm.
And and again, this is more of a pontification than an experience thing. But the more I work through it, the more I look at other models from other sports, the more it seems to me that a lot of times for profit is used synonymously with greed,
Mm.
whereas I don't think that it has to be. I think you can come at it with the best of intentions, execute correctly, have a smart head on your shoulders, and be aware of the potential pitfalls, and run it in a very specific way. The issue with, I think, a for-profit is like, well, the person on top is going to take the biggest cut. That's not necessarily the case. I mean,
Mm.
true, the opportunity is there. That is undeniable. But what if they didn't? What if they paid themselves something that, I mean, I think in my mind, my model that I use for this is someone like Gary Vaynerchuk. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Mm.
Yeah, is that yeah?
No, no.
No,
Is he
okay.
Vans guy?
What's that?
Is he behind Vans?
No. So Gary Vaynerchuk is outside of skateboarding. He's
Uh,
actually a digital marketing guy.
uh,
To make it to reduce it. Basically, he speaks a lot. His delivery is sometimes can be misconstrued, and I think a lot of his arguments, it can be difficult to track because you really have to pay attention to the context in which he's speaking. But by and large, I do think that the way he approaches this is kind of where it comes from. Is like the guy runs a digital marketing agency that is on multiple continents. He has thousands of employees, and the majority of the money that could go to him personally gets funneled back into the business to grow it. And he speaks very openly about it. And there's room for lies, obviously, but
mhm.
considering what I've seen, I tend to believe that that is actually the way he approaches things. And regardless if he approaches it that way or not, he explains the model in terms of like, I pay me enough for what I need to do, and I then can funnel the rest of the profit back into the company in different ways. And the more I listen, to you speak about this, to other people speak about the pitfalls of jump rope, if the head coach leaves, that's different. But a lot of times there's this financial resource that is the limiting factor. And to me, it seems like, well, if you approached things from an altruistic for-profit perspective, what then happens?
Mm.
And if you're somebody who, again, back to the point we spoke about earlier about, competitive jump ropers learning marketing, learning business, and adding those to their skill set. I think that a lot of people I think one of the best things that has happened to me has been not becoming 100% all in on the competitive jump rope culture, and having been removed from it for a period of time because it's given me the ability, like the hardest thing I've done in terms of coaching is like getting caught up. And when you describe doing that 1 hour practice, running them through and destroying that class, like I've done the same thing because you don't understand, because you know so much that it gets in the way of learning something new.
Yes.
And so point is, I think that, what would happen in terms of injecting money into the system sustainably, like to your point about like, you should be bringing the best athletes. Like the Olympics brings all the best athletes. They are paid to go there because the Olympics is based on a machine that has profit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge consideration for the sports that get selected, is how profitable are they to view and to watch,
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens when you make an organization for jump rope that does that says, Stewart, you're world champion, let's go, you're sponsored, you start, and then now what happens is but if you, and a lot of this has become so much more clear studying the history of skateboarding. Like when you have the Bones Brigade, that was like this ragtag team of people that was hand selected, you start to see that was one small thing, but as money becomes part of the system, different groups come up. And it reminds me of like Flight Crew and like Jump Pro and like all these groups. Like, what if they were not only friends, but friends after making a paycheck?
Mm-hmm.
And then how many more show up? And then now that there is money to sustain the livelihood without having to seek alternative resources, what happens when they get to focus?
Exactly.
So anyway, this is kind of a long spiel, but that's kind of like, to your point about bringing the athletes out, that has been something that's been really on my mind a lot.
Oh my gosh, yes. I was fortunate enough to go to this Arnold tournament in Hong Kong. I think that was 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, so it was one of my favorite jump rope trips ever, because I was with some of my favorite jumpers. Like Tori was there, Nick was there, Sean was there, Ilias and Stevens were there. Oh, we had so much fun.
Stevens is such a nice guy. Oh my gosh. And
they treated us so well, because they did have the resources to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to one of the people leading it, and he was saying, he went to school for sports management,
mm-hmm.
and he's like, yo, like there's a science behind this, there's a way to do this, and you do need to have the financial resources to do this well. And I know there's like a lot of drama between the two organizations
mm-hmm.
in Hong Kong right now. But at the end of the day, I think that whatever happens, it's probably going to be under really good leadership that understands how to have the financial resources to get the mission done. I'm still not exactly sure if I believe all the parts of the jump rope universe should move towards a for-profit model,
mm-hmm.
Because I do think that
not all of them. Yeah, sorry.
Right.
What I was saying was more just in terms of like the trajectory to shoot us up, and from there, then things open up in my mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
not all of it. That, I think that would be a massive vulnerability and issue if all of it was for profit.
Yeah, that'd be a little scary.
Yeah.
I think it's unquestionable that there need to be the financial resources, and we need to look at ways to get those into these organizations in a way that, allows jump rope to maintain its unique culture and benefits. And I think that one thing that, I was just thinking about that probably doesn't come up enough is there is abuse in jump rope. I've heard of some situations where there's some financial abuse going on, or at worst, sexual abuse. And there's not a lot of space to talk about that yet. And my fear is that it's already tough right now,
mm-hmm.
To have those conversations. And, when money gets involved,
right. mm-hmm.
And there's been very high profile situations, namely gymnastics, where
right, exactly,
there has been abuse in it, and there is a lot of money involved, and that makes it challenging. So that's something we need to be cognizant of. And then we need to start having those courageous conversations about how, jump rope is primarily working with a very vulnerable populations, right? They're people, they're children. It's a lot of like women and girls. And I think at some point we need to start having the conversation about what are we doing to protect these vulnerable populations from abuse.
Right. Yeah. It's important. It's like, yeah, actually, now that you say it, that on one hand, it's a negative because we haven't had those conversations. On one hand, from my own experience, which is obviously limited, but from what I've seen, it's
Mhm.
like the culture of jump rope is so, I guess, good. I don't know if that's the right term to use. That it doesn't make sense for it to fit. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Not that it doesn't, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist. And you're right that we do need to speak about it, but in terms of why we don't speak about it, the culture of jump rope to me seems competitive jump rope seems far different than that of gymnastics, where
Mhm.
gymnastics and cheerleading culture, there's a lot more raw competition, and there's a lot more. It's also larger. The larger it
Oh yeah.
is, it's inevitable because of numbers and statistics. But you're right. Like, how do we, not inevitable in terms of the outcome, but inevitable to have somebody show up who does not have the right intentions.
Mhm.
So but you're right. And it's, now that you say it, I actually have never heard anyone, not only not they haven't brought that up, but they also haven't um, reported any cases of that.
Right.
Not that it hasn't
I,
exist
I
though, to your point.
exactly. I've heard rumors, but we've never had the community come together to talk about it openly. And just because, yeah, I do not believe that it's not happening. And
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah.
saddened to think about it because it's like, damn, there's probably a lot of people who have a lot of experiences that have not really felt like they have the space to talk about that openly.
Hmm.
And that has to change if we want to grow the sport.
Now, you might not have an answer to this question because I don't, but for the sake of going down this path, what do you think could be done?
Um,
And that is they're not supposed
yeah,
to be an answer to that one, but yeah.
I will say I'm not an expert on this, and I'm certainly not. Yeah, this is still something that is an issue I'm very new to,
Hmm.
but I think at the minimum, there needs to be people look they're open to receiving these kinds of stories so we can begin to formulate the
Hmm.
solutions.
Hmm.
I think right now we've kind of closed our eyes and ears to a lot of issues that have been bubbling within the universe of jump rope, at
Hmm.
least in the competitive universe,
Hmm.
right? We haven't talked about we talked about accessibility. We haven't talked about the racial aspect of that as much.
Hmm.
We talk about, it's a youth sport, but we haven't talked about the abuse that might be within the sport.
Hmm.
So there needs to be the governing bodies can look into ways to make sure they're getting that kind of information and actionalizing it by taking these stories, listening and coming up with smart solutions that are going to address them directly. And it's okay to fuck up here, right?
Right.
um,
Right.
I mean, certainly you don't want to. We're human. We're going to fuck up, and that's the important thing is that we're trying, and we're open to receiving these kinds of very serious criticisms that do exist.
Well, and I think while it is a relatively grave subject, I tend to view where we're at right now in a very positive light in terms of we have all the opportunity in the world to do this now because of how
Hmm.
small it is. And it is growing, but it's nowhere near the size of somewhere like gymnastics or cheerleading. Like we have all the room now, like you're saying, test things, revise, make errors now.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
by the time we get, I mean, yeah, it's like standard investing, right? Like you do this early on, you save yourself a huge headache later. And it seems like now would be a very good time to tackle it head on.
Exactly.
Not that it's easy, but it's a good time.
People are very receptive to new things right now. I think the sport's undergoing a lot of changes very, very quickly. And so now is a good time to start bringing up these conversations. And, there's probably facets or dimensions that, we haven't even touched on that are very important.
Hmm.
I think if you're listening to this podcast, you're like, damn, I really wish they talked about this. I think, I guess this is your nudge to bring it up with
Hmm.
someone who is working on whatever governing body you care about, and have that conversation because my impression is that in the year 2020, people are very receptive
Hmm.
to listening and turning that into some form of action. And if they aren't, I am. So DM me.
Right. Obviously, same here. That's why we're having the conversation. Yeah, which is good. I like that. It's new territory, and I not new in the subject of itself, but at least you're completely right that it has not been talked about, and I'm glad that we are covering it now. This is really good. Along this same tangent, and you can take this however you choose, but I'm curious, like what you hope to accomplish with jump rope in the future, whether that's for yourself or organizations, like wherever you want to take that.
Yeah, I think at the minimum, I plan to at least jump rope for my physical and mental health to maintain I mean, for me, it allows me to have the academic or professional success that I've been experiencing lately. So that's a given. I think that when it comes to competitive jump rope, I had to, really interrogate my role in that. I'm still not exactly sure. I think I have
Mm-hmm.
at least another good competition in me, but regardless of what I do competitively, my style is gonna have to change. I'm getting older. The repetitive nature of jump rope, the intensity that I've been doing it at, is not sustainable into my like 30s and 40s.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think the sport, I can still do things that I feel good about or learn new things well into those decades in my life. So I'm trying to be intentional about, okay, well, how do I start to transition my style to match my age and my body? When it comes to larger macro level, governing body stuff and the culture, as well as these really new opportunities when it comes to fitness and performance, I have no idea. I think I have a lot of experience in the competitive world. I think I'm certainly learning other stuff. I guess it sounds cliche, but I'm just trying to stay humble and respect these new things that are happening around me and trying to understand them. And like I've done with other parts of my life that you really articulated well is just see the opportunities, and then take them when they make sense.
Hmm. That's really good. If the younger version of you, and you can pick whatever time period makes sense. In my mind, I'm thinking somewhere around 10 years old, but you can pick whatever makes sense for you. If that version of you could see who you are now, what would they say?
Uh, um, good. I don't
Good.
know.
Thumbs up.
Like I was, even when I was like, honestly, even when I just started, right, the whole goal was to be a world champion, and so to see that I was able to make that happen, good. Like I'm doing this for a reason, and I'm getting there. I think the professional stuff, I would have never guessed.
Mm-hmm.
Never, even senior year me that fall, I will never anticipate that this would be possible. So, um, I don't know what I would say to myself as a younger person, and probably just like, wow, this is cool. Um, what's been cool to me at 5 and I don't know, 15 and 18, it's still pretty cool to me now. So, I think I feel good about that.
Where did that drive come from? You're saying when you first started jump rope, you wanted to be a world champion. That was like in your head. Where where did that come from?
Probably anime. I don't know.
That was the answer I was not expecting. Well done.
Like you watch like Pokemon where it's like, oh, I want to be the very best. It's literally
Yeah.
in the theme song. Goku's out trying to be the best Z fighter in all of the universe. I don't know. There's a lot of encouragement on TV to be the very best, and I guess I just ate all that up. And it's pretty easy when you walk into the gym and you see the world champion right
Mm-hmm.
there, right
Mm-hmm.
on day one. You're like, oh, this is pretty easy. I want to be the world champion like Marcus is. Marcus is right here. I can be the world champion.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's, it felt accessible to me. I didn't realize how I was 5, so I didn't realize how like much that meant,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of work that would require. But it felt real because I'd seen it.
Yeah. It was, you know, in some respects, as we've discussed, a jump rope is not accessible, but once you've accessed it and it's
Yeah.
right there in front of you, the culture as it stands now is very within your grasp should you put the hard work in. So
Yes.
that's a really good point. What has jump rope taught you, if anything?
It's taught me so much. It's taught me lessons that I've had to also reject later in life. So I used to think that one of the lessons from jump rope is you work hard enough, you get your results. Then I went to Stanford. And I took this introductory math course, CME 100, which is like vector calculus and multivariable. And I worked, and then I took differential equations. And those like ripped me a new one, man. It was
Yeah,
brazy. I was like
yeah.
working so hard, staying up with the homies, studying, and I just could not pull it out. And I realized that, okay, it's not just about working hard. You actually have to work with the right methods in order to get the results you want. You can work as hard as you want, but if you're not doing the right things, you're not going to get the results. And that lesson I was able to take back into jump rope, apply that to the thing like the money maker or learning a full or other skills, and see much more success. I think jump rope really has taught me just, consistency can certainly bring you closer to your goals. That might be one of the biggest takeaways I've gotten.
That is really, really important. What were the, if you remember, if it's even worth asking, like what were the methods, the correct methods that you implemented? It sounds like when you were taking those classes at the beginning, you were not using the correct methods, and then you did switch. What was the switch?
Yeah, time management is one of the big ones. I had to get really good at managing my time. I needed to read the book, and in
It's
high
so
school,
true.
yeah, in high school, you might be able to get away with just showing up and doing the homework. That doesn't work in college. There's actually reading you should probably be doing. Going to office hours. Finding a group of people I can study with that are going to push me to master the content as opposed to just trying to like figure it out by myself because of some strange, conception of like ego and like not needing help. Yeah, all that had to go. Flush it down the toilet. You need help. No one who's gotten to where they are, who's successful, has gotten there by themselves.
That is
Um,
extremely true.
yeah. So office hours helps. Friends who are good at it that you can work with help. There's also research that suggests that that's really helpful. Managing your time well. You need to. If you're staying up till 4 a.m. every night, you have a diminishing returns. So the effort you're putting in, you're getting less out of. So you actually have to optimize for efficiency as opposed to just the amount of time you put in. That's one of the lessons I learned at Stanford.
Being efficient and effective.
Yeah, exactly. So with the little time you have, because you're probably doing a lot, it needs to go a long way. And so that means that you need to make sure you're rested enough and you've put it in the right time block such that it's going to be the most effective it can be.
Man, this has been a really, really phenomenal conversation. We are 3.5 hours deep right now.
Yes, we are.
And it's been genuinely so good, man. We have covered so much territory, and this is why before the call I was like, hey, how much time do you have? As I had a feeling we were going to do this.
The questions, I was like, this can be really long, huh?
I mean, it's as short as you want to make it, but yeah, I'm glad you were open to this, man, because we have, it's been really, really good. I think the final question to kind of wrap up here, this is a question that I asked to everyone who's on the show, which is, what is jump rope to you?
Yeah, I looked at that. Does it need to be one word? How can I answer this?
You can answer however you want. Yeah, whatever makes sense to you.
I think jump rope is some therapeutic version of expression in a lot of different ways. It's like, I mean, in some facets, jump rope is, community for me, which, can be, very, it feels warm and good. It's also, a mental outlet from a lot of the other stresses in my life. It's a form of expression. I realized recently that I thought that I could use jump rope to kind of like change the way I feel. It turns out it's the reverse. The way my skills come out is actually highly dependent on how I feel about myself when I start jumping.
That is, wow. That's, yeah.
Yeah. So So it turns out all the videos are really just a form of me expressing how I'm feeling. So jump rope is expression, and it's also a way to, I guess, it does in a way augment the way I see myself. Because when I do get the skills I want, it feels good, and I feel valuable and good about myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is a really good answer. I mean, there's no wrong answer, but I like the way that you've framed that in terms of the way the cause and effect actually plays out.
Hmm. Yeah. Very frustrating, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, when you said that, what was going through my mind was like all the times I showed up really pissed because I couldn't get what I wanted to get, and then all I had was a bunch of videos of me missing after an hour.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. And it's like, oh, I want to just have a cathartic session where I get everything. And that's absolutely the opposite of what happens. I have a
Yeah.
cathartic session where I get more frustrated because it didn't go at all the way I wanted to.
Yeah. Or like you end up like you go in saying like, all right, today I'm working on triple frogs and then like some double under
Hmm.
kamikaze push-ups. Then you're like, oh, this is like a cool new footwork sequence that I got.
Yeah, yep, yep.
That's how it always goes.
Yeah, man.
Nice, dude. Well, seriously, man, I appreciate you taking all this time. This has been the longest podcast to date. So, super packed full of a lot of really good stuff. So, thank you, dude. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been a true pleasure. I've been thinking about this for weeks, so that's why I've had a lot of time to think about this, even before I approached you. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come speak.
Absolutely. And you're definitely welcome back anytime. Hey, before you go, I just wanted to say one last thing. One of my main goals for this podcast is to share the stories, of other jumpers and provide a full picture about everything that's possible with the jump rope. The more people that hear this, the better. And it would really help me out if you sent this podcast to somebody you know, whether in real life or digitally on Instagram, Facebook, whatever platform you use. It would mean the world to me. So that's it. I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, lunch, evening, whatever time it is for you right now. See you later.